We're going to continue on with this lesson from the previous lesson where we got ready to implement FCoE on these switches, and we performed some basic setup tasks. In this lesson we use 5548A and 5548B that are going to be linking to our host with links E1/30, and that host is going to be taking advantage of Fiber Channel over Ethernet to connect to the network. As we continue our setup procedures, we have already created our VLANs and our vSANs and turned on the Fiber Channel over Ethernet functionality. Now we want to create our virtual Fiber Channel interface, and we want to associate that virtual Fiber Channel interface with the Ethernet 1/30. We then want to add that virtual Fiber Channel interface to vSAN 400. We also want to make sure that VLAN 400 is associated with vSAN 400, and we want to make sure that that's an FCoE VLAN. Finally, we want to configure port 1/30 as a trunk port, and we want to make sure that our FCoE VLANs and our data VLANs are allowed on that port. And then we want to go ahead and bring up that port, and we repeat the process on the second side, Nexus 5548B, with VLAN 500 and vSAN 500 to maintain our Fabric A and Fabric B scenario. Let's take a look at the switches. Here we are back on our Nexus 5548. We're already in our configuration terminal mode where we left it last time. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create an interface, virtual Fiber Channel 400. It makes it easier if we name the interfaces in a way that makes sense. So that's why I picked 400. They're only locally significant though, so they could be VFC 400 on this switch and another switch, but I like to keep them in a way that they're going to be locally significant. This makes it easier for troubleshooting. So next I want to bind this interface to Ethernet 1/30. So when that physical interface comes up, that this virtual Fiber Channel interface will come up. And then I want to no-shut this interface. I also have the ability to configure the mode for this VFC, and that's going to be important later when we do FCoE multi-hop. But for right now, the switch port mode is going to be F. And I already did the no-shut on this interface, so that should be good. Now I want to go exit out of here, and I want to go to VLAN 400, and I want to say that this is an FCoE VLAN and it's associated with vSAN 400. And I'm going to make sure that's no shut as well. Now I can go ahead and exit out of that. The one thing I forgot to do was to go into my vSAN database and add vSAN 400 interface VFC 400. So I have now added that VFC interface to this vSAN. So as you can see, everything is linked together. The VFC is linked to the physical Ethernet port. The VFC is also bound to vSAN 400. VLAN 400 is also bound to vSAN 400. So when I put that VLAN on that trunk port and that link comes up, both that VLAN and the VFC are going to come up. Right now I'm getting error messages because all of those interfaces are down. Next I want to go ahead and go to my interface. Well, let me go ahead and exit out of here. Go back to my config prompt and go to interface E1/30. I want this to be switch port mode trunk, spanning tree, port type, edge, trunk, switch port, trunk, allowed, VLANs. Let's say my data VLAN is 999 and we know my FCoE VLAN is 400. And now we can no shut that interface, and then we can exit out. Now that that switch is configured, I want to do the same thing on the other side with my VFC 500. So I want to go ahead and create my VFC. So I'm already in config terminal. I'm going to say interface VFC 500. I'm going to bind the interface to E1/30, and I'm going to say switch port mode F because this is a fabric port, and then I'm going to no shut, and I'm going to exit. I'm then going to go into vSAN database. I'm going to go to vSAN 500. I'm going to say vSAN 500 interface VFC 500. Now I'm going to exit out of that. I'm going to go into VLAN 500 and I'm going to say FCoE vSAN 500 and associate this VLAN with that FCoE vSAN. Now I'm going to go to interface E1/30 where my host is connected. I'm going to say that it's switch port mode trunk. Say switch port trunk allowed VLAN 999 and 500. Going to say spanning tree type trunk edge. Spanning tree port type edge trunk. I'm going to do no shut. I'm going to exit. So now I've configured both of my sides, my side A and side B, with their VFC configuration, and I've configured them with F ports going down to the end host. So now if I do a show interface E1/30, I can see that my SFP isn't inserted and this interface is down. But if I was to go ahead and do a show run interface E1/30, I could see that I have my FCoE VLAN and my data VLAN associated with this. It's in a trunk mode and it's an edge trunk, so it's going to come up right away. And if I say show VLAN FCoE, I can see that my VLAN is 500 and it's translated to vSAN ID 500 and that it's up and operational. If I do show vSAN membership, I can see that in vSAN 500 my interface VFC 500 is part of that. I can also do a show interface VFC 500 and I can see that it's down right now because the port's down, but it is in F mode and the port vSAN is 500. So once that port lights up, this vSAN is going to come up and be ready to go. Show run interface VFC 500 shows me my configuration for that VFC interface. Please join me for the next lesson, configuring FCoE multi-hop.